name's Leonie. I'm 32 years of age, and when I was 25 I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. Ulcerative colitis is a form of inflammatory bowel disease. It's an autoimmune condition whereby your immune system doesn't recognise healthy cells and essentially attacks itself. So when I was 25 when I was diagnosed, and I became quite acutely unwell. I thought I had a tummy bug at the time. I had really sore stomach, I was going to the toilet a lot, I felt very sick. I wasn't really able to eat or drink, so I did think this is just a stomach flu. I went to the doctor after about a week or 10 days because I knew it wasn't getting any better, and I thought if this is just a tummy bug it should really get better by now. So the GP then sent me over to the hospital to have some additional tests done. So that was on a Friday, I was admitted to hospital. On the Saturday then I had what's called a flexible sigmoidoscopy. So that's like a camera test through the bottom to look at the colon. And it was saw then that my colon was covered in ulcers. So I was diagnosed, that was my first diagnosis within sort of 10 or 14 days of first becoming unwell, which is quite a quick diagnosis. And then that really got the ball rolling with treatment and medication. I got started straight away. So if I was diagnosed on a Saturday, and on the Monday I was introduced to a team of dietitians, an inflammatory bowel disease nurse specialist, my general consultant, a gastroenterologist, and a whole team of individuals to help look after me. Well, I suppose from then it was a big learning curve really. I was learning what the symptoms were. As I say, initially I thought that it was a tummy bug, so you can imagine part of the condition involves needing the toilet quite a lot, but there's a lot of other unknown symptoms that go hand in hand with ulcerative colitis. I had really painful, inflamed, swollen joints. I had mouth ulcers. I was suffering with fatigue. My hair was falling out. I was struggling to sort of absorb nutrients. So it was learning how to manage my diet and my lifestyle, I suppose, to help manage symptoms alongside the medication. The condition goes between periods of active disease and remission, so it took me about 4.5 years to get into remission. And for me to get to remission I needed to have a couple of surgeries actually, so medications weren't working for me any longer. It was like the disease was progressing but my body wasn't responding anymore to the medications. So I had to have a few surgeries. I think for a lot of people, sort of the public perception is, you know, that it's a disease that is purely to do with running to the toilet, or quite often it's compared to IBS, and whilst the conditions and the symptoms certainly overlap, one is an autoimmune disease. So there's nothing really that I could have done to prevent getting this. And again, a lot of people then assume that, oh, is it to do with what you eat and drink? But again, it's not caused by what I eat and drink, but how I eat and drink can help me manage certain symptoms. So for me, I followed, under the sort of guidance of dietitians, I followed what was called a low residue diet. So that involved a lot of low fibre foods. And now with living with an ileostomy, so I now have a permanent stoma. Again, I still have to be mindful of certain things that I am eating and drinking. I suppose I went one day from essentially being very healthy to quite poorly, and my life revolved around hospital appointments, doctor's appointments. I was constantly going to get blood work done, scans, tests, x-rays. I was seeing nurse specialists, I was seeing my GP, I was seeing consultants. So a lot of my life then revolved around these hospital appointments, and some of the medications that I was put on to help manage the condition were immunosuppressant medications, so it tries to sort of dampen down your immune system to essentially try and stop it attacking itself. But then with immunosuppressive medication, then you're more prone to picking up other bugs and infections and things. So I was constantly having to get my bloods checked to make sure that I was keeping well, that I was well enough to continue having medications. It almost felt like a catch-22 at times. So yeah, I suppose that was the biggest change for me, was a lot of medical management, and then I was involved with dietitians who helped me to sort of learn about how to manage my diet when I was in a flare-up, or how I could adjust it then when I was in remission and feeling a little better. I suppose it was a juggling act. It certainly felt like that at times, and you had all these plates spinning and you were trying to manage, going to work. I was actually studying for exams at the time when I was initially diagnosed. So I was studying for exams, I was going to work, and then all these hospital appointments in between times, as well as trying to, I suppose, keep up some sort of social life and, spend time with your friends and your family and that sort of thing. And I think when you don't necessarily look unwell, a lot of people would be quick to assume that, you're fine to do all these things. But what I have found, or what I learnt about from sort of joining the chronic illness community, as it were, was that, people with chronic illnesses don't have the same energy reserve. So I very quickly had to learn that, I didn't and I don't have the same sort of energy levels as I did before. So I have to pick and choose how I manage my time, and I suppose my energy, because it is so precious. So you're really, I suppose, you're stretching yourself, across so many different aspects of your life. But for me, a real turning point then was when, it seems strange to say, but I became so unwell that my medications weren't working anymore, and it was decided that the best option for me was to have a surgery, to have an ileostomy. So I was 27 when that happened. It wasn't a planned surgery. It ended up being an emergency situation because I had again been hospitalised because I was so unwell. And that was just, it really was like a U-turn moment, and I was able to get my life back. Now it wasn't, obviously it took time to recover from the surgery, and learning to live with a stoma then was a learning curve in itself too. But it gave me a lot more freedom and a lot more flexibility, and I feel more like me when I was first diagnosed now than I did after the initial diagnosis of ulcerative colitis. With the stoma then, I've been able to get back to work. I've been able to continue things that I would have loved doing before I was diagnosed. Quite often when I was in a flare-up with ulcerative colitis, like, my life was dictated by where the nearest toilet was, how far had I to go, how long would I be out of the house. And now I feel I can leave the house a lot more, I suppose, with peace of mind, knowing that I can just potter off and not really have to worry so much about where the nearest toilet is, at least not with the same urgency that it would have been before. I would say definitely for me now there's a lot less worry and anxiety. I couldn't say it's entirely gone. There's still you still have some concerns, some worries. Living with a stoma, there are still possibilities of complications, and I don't say that to worry anyone, but that's just being completely honest about it. I still have to be mindful of certain foods that I'm eating. and how that might impact on me. Essentially, without having a colon, my body doesn't reabsorb water the same way. So managing hydration levels and things like that can sometimes be a wee bit tricky, and certain foods just don't digest as easily as they would have before. So I would be mindful of particular foods. But one thing I would say as well about people who have stomas, not everyone is the same. So what affects one person won't necessarily affect the next person. You know, if I struggle with eating one type of food, that the next person with a stoma might not have any issues with it at all. So that's a learning curve, you know, and it took me a wee while. But I've now had my stoma 5.5 years, and I have to say it's been a brilliant 5.5 years. I'm really grateful, and I'm really thankful every day for it. One of the main charities in the UK are Crohn's and Colitis UK, that sort of I suppose specialise in focus on these conditions. After I was diagnosed, it can be quite a lonely and isolating time. You're sort of hit with this, you now have this condition, you'll live with it the rest of your life, there's no cure, and you're thinking, what on earth, what does life have ahead for me, you know, because when you're at your sickest and you feel most vulnerable, it's a very scary place to be, and to not know what lies ahead. And I suppose no two people's journeys are exactly the same, but I was pointed in the direction of Crohn's and Colitis UK. So my inflammatory bowel nurse specialist at the time pointed me in the direction of the charity, and they produce all these different publications and information available to people with these conditions. And actually they have local networks. So across the UK there's 50 different local networks, and one of them are based here in Northern Ireland. And these local networks then provide support to local people. There's a group of volunteers then that you can touch base with, and I found it great when I was diagnosed, because I was able to go to events and different places just to meet others who live with the conditions. And it was nice to be in an environment whereby you knew there was no judgment. You knew that you were with people who really understood how you were feeling, what you were going through. And it was nice just to make connections that way. And then over time I actually got involved with the Northern Ireland network, so I now volunteer with them and help out. So it's lovely to be in that position now where I feel like I'm well enough and experienced enough to sort of give back to others that are in similar situations. And I think especially for those maybe newly diagnosed, or anyone who is going through a really hard time, you know, and they're struggling with flare-ups and struggling maybe to get to remission, it's lovely to see that there are people out there, you know, who are living life and continuing on probably as close to normal as they can do, you know, prior to their diagnosis. And it's nice even to meet other people and know that they're interested in you as a person, not purely just your condition or your diagnosis, because it's person first, condition after. You know, I'm a person who lives with this. It doesn't live with me, you know. I think a lot of people can get bogged down in the conditions, and they think, oh, this is my whole identity, and it's not really, because you're still there, you're still the person underneath.